Christina Lomasney joins me now. She is the Chief Executive of Modumetal. Christina, when we look at, we've been talking about the fourth industrial revolution, we've been talking about high technology, but talk to me a little bit about the value that you see technology bringing to the industry.
Well, I think ultimately we can never tell what value technology is going to bring, right? But at the end of the day, it isn't about the technology, it's about what it means for the business itself. So, for example, what is the return on assets or the operational efficiency, or how do we reduce technology down to those metrics that actually make sense for the business? And that's the key. That's really the key to success for any kind of technology venture.
Now, it might sound a little bit controversial saying it's not about the technology, because there's plenty of people out there saying it is only about the technology. But I see where you're coming from. And if one doesn't work with the other, it's probably just a huge waste of investment.
It really is. And I can say that because I'm a technology innovator, right? So I can actually make that statement. And it's an important lesson that I learned as a physicist, as an inventor, as a CEO of an innovative company. And that is, it isn't about the technology. It isn't really about us. It's about how we deploy technology to do something meaningful in the industry. So I'll give you an example. When we started our company, we make nano-layered alloys. We make them at industrial scale, we make them cost effectively. We're very excited about our technology. We're excited about bringing electricity into manufacturing of metals instead of heat. All of that's really cool, and it is easy to get excited about. But when we sat down with our first oil and gas customer, they didn't care about nanotechnology, they didn't care about electricity, they didn't care about any of it. They cared about what does it mean for me in terms of my return on assets, what does it mean for me in terms of safer operations. And so ultimately we had to translate our dialogue from one about technology to one about how are we actually going to make an impact on the business itself.
So again, it comes back to performance in a way. So even if it's human performance, I mean, it's also the performance, of your particular type of metal. And while it is maybe the finest and the most high-tech piece of metal, ultimately it's somebody's looking at it and going, what will it do for me? It's the so what and the who cares, isn't it, back again? Bring that also in line with in terms of how you talk about it's also about the people too. Tell me how important that is too, that you blend, the product and the people.
It's absolutely critical in both cases. Both the technology and the people have to basically come together. The challenge is that technology on its own, even if we can articulate that value proposition, doesn't actually have the impact, the value. It doesn't bring the value we want it to bring on its own. People have to be willing to champion technology and to bring it into realization. And the challenge is when we talk about the oil and gas industry, or any major industry for that matter, there's an old way of doing things. I mean, the oil's going to get produced at the end of the day, technology or not. And so we have to recognize that it really takes people, and people that are willing to be a little bit revolutionary in their day-to-day activities, to actually make that technology real. And so it's the champions, it's the people that are willing to take a risk and are willing to seize on an opportunity and bring it all the way through all of the challenges to fruition that actually makes technology bring value into the business.
Now, the oil and gas industry has been perhaps criticized in the past about being very slow to change. And I mean, I think it's probably a fact. They're still probably very slow to change. What can you do to maybe give them that bit of a nudge? And what are the companies? Some companies are actually doing it.
I think that the challenge in the oil and gas industry isn't unique to the oil and gas industry. Again, this goes back to it's a very structured industry. It's structured for a reason. I mean, there's safety considerations associated with production. It's a major commodity marketplace, and so there's structural reasons why this industry stays the way that it is. At the same time, when we talk about, we mentioned earlier, performance is key, the industry doesn't actually operate on the basis of performance necessarily. In its day-to-day activities, the business actually operates on the basis of process. And I'll give you a great example of that. In our industry, in metals, right, we talk about performance, we talk about corrosion resistance, we talk about strength, we talk about return on assets and all these things, and at the end of the day, we sell in a spec-based market. And the specs are written such that we actually define the process. So my favorite example is galvanizing, the most prevalent corrosion mitigation coating in the world. right, is defined on the basis of its process of manufacture. So the specs today say, thou shalt hot dip galvanize. The specs were written in the US in 1928 for galvanizing, and they're still used today. And the problem is we took a snapshot in time of a process in 1928 and we still use it today. So you can imagine that that kind of a mindset, that process-based mindset, and that kind of infrastructure, that spec-based infrastructure, make it really hard to innovate on the basis of performance when what you defined in the first place wasn't performance but process. So we're trying to work within the industry to say, hey, if you were to just say, I want a product that corrodes, like never, or has this level of strength, we could deliver that product and maybe even something better. And so that definition of performance, if we can just get there, we could have incredible opportunities for innovation throughout the industry.
Do you get a feel that people are embracing that? The people you're talking to, what's on the agenda? What are people excited about? And maybe what are they concerned about? Because this is a big challenge out there as well.
I think it seems like it's definitely a much more enthusiastic time when it comes to technology. So certainly in our space in nanotechnology, you hear a lot more discussion about potential applications. I mean, the other areas are Internet of Things and artificial intelligence. We're hearing so much about all the data collection that's taken place over the last several years, now turning into data analytics and basically how to take that data and turn it into an actionable intelligence. And so I think there are going to be a whole lot of opportunities that kind of come up as a result of not just the technology evolution, but the willingness of the industry to really embrace it. And so it's exciting times.